Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
I'm just in a movie theater, and all of a sudden there's a trailer for like the re-release of specials. I fell to the floor screaming. I was like, I'm gonna see these movies in theaters. Oh my god. And then
Hello there, this is Dave and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars. From industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. Now, I've always loved hearing people's passionate points of view on Star Wars because, for me, it reveals new ways of looking at the franchise. Also, let's just face it, it's fun to talk Star Wars. My guest today hails from Brooklyn, New York, and was raised on comic books, movie serials, and lightsabers. Best known for his Green Lama Legacy series and his original graphic novel, Sons of Fire, he writes for a number of publishers. All this, and he works as a full-time television producer and a part-time screenwriter. And just recently, his story, The Veteran, featuring Dexter Jettster, was just published as part of the anthology series Star Wars From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi. Please give a warm hello there to Adam Lance Garcia.
General Kenobi.
Tell me, Adam, are you ready to share with the world what does Star Wars mean to you?
Yeah, I feel like I've been doing that every day since I discovered it. So yes, I live this life.
That's fantastic. Now it's going to be on something you can just hit repeat on, and then you can sit back and relax and just be like, "This is what I think."
Yeah. Oh man, this is so surreal. Like as I mentioned before, this is my first interview as a Star Wars author, so I apologize for being super crazy giddy the entire time.
I'm really excited to. This is probably a terrible way of phrasing it, to be your first, but it's
gentle.
Quite an honor. Yes, I will be. But it is really quite an honor because I've been watching your social, and you posted like the first book you signed for someone, posting things of signing books and putting them on the shelves in bookstores, and I think that's fantastic. It's so much fun to see someone enjoying it, getting into the limelight and enjoying it.
I mean, look, this has been my lifelong dream. Like there's literally nothing that I started writing. I wanted to write a Star Wars. That was like my goal. I grew up reading the Expanded Universe. I still have my Expanded Universe collection aside next to my canon selection. And just it is my collecting manifested as sort of the novels and the stories, because my first book that really got me into reading, that really got me into Star Wars, was The Glove of Darth Vader. That's sort of telling you how like my age. And it was like, there's more stories. There's more adventures with Luke. So yeah.
And The Glove of Darth Vader came out in like the early 90s.
Early 90s, I think, like right after The Heir to the Empire. And then I discovered The Heir to the Empire because of my cousin, who's like, well, if you like this, you're going to love this. And that basically started an addiction. But so I, from very early on, it's like I look at some like the fan fiction I wrote, the things I wrote as a kid, the licensed properties that I've worked on, and even like the sort of everything was starting like proving like that I can do this, that I can actually write a Star Wars. So this whole experience has just been, it is a dream come true. It's been wonderful. I'm so happy right now. And I think that's going to keep on going for the rest of the year.
Well, I certainly hope it does. Let's get your Star Wars kind of fandom baseline. And it's with this quick 5 questions I ask. It's called 5 with the Force. It's a standard set of 5 questions for all my guests. And I'll just start with number 1. Which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
That's a really tough question. I'm going to say Empire Strikes Back, and I could give you a whole reason as to why. Basically, I think what Empire Strikes Back does is it kind of establishes what makes Star Wars so wonderful. It's like you enter the story with one idea of what you're going to experience, and then you leave it what's a completely different experience. I think you leave A New Hope, which is obviously it's A New Hope. It's a classic. It is the thing that started this whole franchise. But you leave it with like, here are the good guys, here are the bad guys, here are a very straightforward story, and you enter that with into Empire Strikes Back, and you leave it learning, well, the bad guy was the good guy, and he's the father of the hero, and our hero, our charming pirate, is imprisoned, and they might not win this. That's the thing I've always loved about Star Wars. It does challenge the audience in their expectations. From the very first sequel, you go in with one idea and leave with another. And that's why I think Empire is my favorite for sure. And it's you look at the things that I do have loved since, and you're like, yeah, you could see it tracking through that.
Yeah. Now, for my next question, I need to roll a D6. There we go. 1. Oh, that's okay. Who is your favorite major character?
Oh boy. Growing up, it was Luke, because I just really loved his journey. Right now, I still love Rey. I love her journey. I think there's so much about her journey that's going to be really, really interesting moving forward. I'm really excited about the post episode 9 era. From the moment we're introduced to her to even where she ends up, I think there's something very interesting about her. This idea of someone who grew up loving the legends of Star Wars, and then realizing they're people, and they're flawed, and this isn't a simple, straightforward story that I thought it was going to be. Again, going back to what I loved about Empire Strikes Back, I love her journey, I love her story. So I feel that's both kind of vanilla and sort of controversial to these days, but at the same time, I really love Rey.
What is your favorite line to quote?
Boy, that's my favorite one. Also from Empire Strikes Back, and it's only because I got to use it once. It was freezing outside. It was negative something here in Jersey, and my girlfriend was going out for something, I think groceries, and I just ran up to her your tauntaun won't make it past the first marker. And she looked at me what are you talking about? Because and she'll roll her eyes when I say this, but she's a normie. She likes Star Wars, but she has no appreciation the way that I do. I mean, she appreciates it for what it is, but she doesn't know it like I do. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm just I love you.
Wouldn't you have lost your shit if she then said, then I'll see you in hell? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I would have I would have been shocked if she had known that. But I think it's almost even more endearing that she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm gonna go play with my toys.
Okay, so for number 4, kind of coming off of the favorite quote, can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Maybe, perhaps not that good. I can just sort of that Yoda. I think you can do Darth Vader if you do that. But there's a few. I don't know. My hair was once styled after Han Solo, so I guess that counts. That's not really an impression. It's more just bringing my son. Literally brought my. This is when I was 16. This is a true story. I brought my essential guide to the characters book to my barber. I'm like, I want that. And it's since shifted a bit. It kind of does its own thing now, but there was an active choice of I want Han Solo's haircut.
Was it Empire Strikes Back haircut?
Yes, it was sort of that lift over the left eye, sort of split sort of thing. And again, if you look at my hair now, it doesn't do that because it just decided to do whatever it did. But 100% was that was it. It was him in the jacket, sort of leaning forward photo.
That's fantastic. I love the idea that you brought your essential guides to the Star Wars characters to your barber. I wish I was like that industrious when I was a kid. I'd have the Luke Skywalker for 3 years,
Yeah.
and then I'd have that Han Solo Empire Strikes Back look for like 4 years. Then I'd probably just go with I grew a mullet. I'd probably just do the Darth Vader helmet for high school, just slicked back and hard. And then my final question with 5 for the Force. Besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, comic book, novel, a game.
I mean, look, it's gonna sound like I'm shilling, but I love the books. I mean, I've loved every I think I've already sort of insinuated this, but like the novels from the EU to today have they're not like my primary source of Star Wars. I think the films always will be, but they kept everything alive for so long. And I think what the novels did back in the EU days, and in today too, it's like it shows how you can expand the universe. You have the High Republic, which has been fantastic, where it's like, hey, there's this whole different era. There's all these things you didn't know about. With the old canon, it was like, here are new adventures with Luke, Han, and Leia. In a lot of ways, it helped you those books help define what Star Wars is now, because you look at I always call these like the wilderness periods. It's happened with Star Wars, it's happened with Doctor Who, it's happened with a lot of different franchises, when the main sort of content goes away and then the literature has to kind of expand. And you can look at the EU and you're like, they tried so many different things, and things that were really cool at the time, like the Vong. The use of Vong were like such a cool. The New Jedi Order was so cool because it was like the first time in that period of time, in that era, where the characters can die. That was a thing that you could do. But you look at it now, are the Vong something that could fit into canon? Are they things that are necessarily Star Wars? Do they feel right? And questionable, but at the same time, you get to see this exploratory aspect of it. And then again, the High Republic. What I love about the High Republic is I love the idea that there's this. It's 200 years ago, 350 years ago, where you see this. It's familiar, but it's different. It's it's different in a way that's very unique. Because I love the Knights of the Old Republic game and the Old Republic in general, but a lot of ways because they leaned into the Jedi versus Sith mythology, it kind of felt a little similar to the OT. Whereas the High Republic, it's just because they're not doing the Sith, because they're doing it with the Nihil, and because it's again, similar but different. You can see the Jedi at the heights, you understand how far they fall. Mm-hmm. So the books just they mean the world to me, dude. I have so many of them. They're my favorite. I love them so much.
I think it's kind of interesting that people will want things from the canon, or I'm sorry, the Legends series, to carry over to current canon. Mara Jade, if he wasn't already in it, Thrawn. And I think it's probably difficult to decide, what do we bring in and how do we introduce it? Because that's opening a big bag of debate.
Yeah, and I think there's ways you can bring elements of the EU into canon. I mean, there's already mirror images of things like Ben Solo and Jason Solo are very similar. Even the First Order is very similar to the Imperial Remnant. You have a lot of as we mentioned, Ken and Rey from the grandchild of Palpatine. There are elements that sort of mirror, and there are ways you can bring certain stories. And I say this again as someone both as a fan and as someone now sort of tiptoeing on the inside. It's I feel I don't really want to see an adaptation of these stories. That's just not my personal desire. I really want to see new stuff. I want to see I feel I've seen these stories. I like these stories. I'm curious to see what Filoni's going to do with an Heir to the Empire sort of adaptation. But my hope is that he takes sort of the elements that work and do very different things. I want to be surprised, because again, Star Wars, as much as I love the novels, Star Wars is movies first, is TV shows first. I want to sit down in the seat and have no idea where things are going. That's the thing that I really loved about a lot of the films that have come out, like Last Jedi and Force Awakens, and like I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen next. That's exciting. Like I don't ever want to know what's going to happen in Star Wars. So like, as much as I would love to see elements from the EU and Legends brought into current canon, whether that be in film, novels, or whatever, I don't ever want to see a one for one. It's sort of where I'm going with this. It's like I don't want to ever have like I'm again hoping that Filoni with Heir to the Empire does kind of diverge a bit, like surprise me. Like I like the idea of like Balin coming in and like who is this, and is that sort of mixing and matching, like bringing the elements of lore like the Night Sisters and Dathomir. That's originally from the Courtship of Princess Leia. Like I like seeing those elements brought in new directions. So again, I don't want to see a one for one. I want to see something that is going to legitimately surprise the audience.
Let's get to your Star Wars journey.
Yeah.
What first introduced you to Star Wars, and can you describe that experience?
Return of the Jedi on VHS, probably recorded off like HBO that my dad did. I don't remember the first time I saw it. I have no memory the first time I saw Star Wars. I am literally the same age as Return of the Jedi. I turned 40 this year, so I don't know
that's even how much better that you were destined for this book.
Oh, I swear to God, this is true. When I was a kid, I was like, I'm the same age as this movie. That means something. And the fact that my first story is set during that film is like, I don't know. Like there's some higher power that's like, yeah, it is. It does mean something. So
I feel like they should put 40 stories celebrating 40 years of Star Wars and Lance Garcia.
Yeah. Well, I have this shirt. I'm not wearing it right now because it's way too warm for it, but I'm wearing it like once it gets a little bit colder. It's like Return of the Jedi 40. And I'm just like, haha, it's the only year I can wear this. Yeah, no, I don't remember the first time I saw it. I remember just loving the movies. I still have my like Luke Skywalker, Return of the Jedi lightsaber kind of like out when I was a kid. There was like all these toys. I just remember being really, really into it. I remember falling asleep watching like Stars of New Hope at my friend's birthday party. I loved it. We had the books, obviously I've mentioned ad nauseum, that I just started collecting, and it was like, this is really exciting. I played a live action role-playing game with my friends a couple of times. We had no idea what we were doing. I had a Darth Vader mask, costume. I just since I was a wee lad, it was just part of my life. It was just something that I loved, and I was into it like when, during that 90s period, like it kind of went away. I remember like, then the special editions. I remember, oh my God, when 1997 they announced like the special editions. We didn't really have internet back then. We did, not the way that we have now, but like I'm just in a movie theater and all of a sudden there's a trailer for like the re-release of specials. I fell to the floor screaming. I was like, I'm gonna see these movies in theaters. Oh my God. And then the prequels, I remember like looking at StarWars.com and just like every day, like for new information. And like I remember it's the first time I was seeing like the Yoda from then and how like big his neck was. I'm like, wow, he's been lifting. And just it's everything about like it's every day. I remember like reading through like all the books during college, the New George, like just going through them. There's not been a moment in my life that Star Wars hasn't factored into in some capacity.
You had mentioned earlier that the Glove of Darth Vader was your first one.
Yeah.
What was it about that kind of sucked you in?
There was more story. There was there was more. That the story didn't end, that the galaxy didn't end. Obviously I think you had Ken, who's introduced in the Lost City of the Jedi as like this sort of POV character. And Triclops and Triculus and the Whalodons, and all these different things. It was just more. It was just and I think that's something that Star Wars does really well. And there's Star Trek and Doctor Who do a really good job as well. And the idea that there's more beyond the story that you knew, but like for Glove of Darth Vader, for Heir to the Empire, even like the Jedi Academy trilogy, all those books said, yeah, you like this story was just these three movies, but like there's more. You could see there's more. And I think it just shows the potential of the franchise that, there's always a corner that you can explore. And I think it's a lot, especially with Star Wars, and I could wax poetic with like even like the sequel trilogy, is that it's more real in a way, because sometimes the friends that you have, you don't keep in touch with anymore. The connections that you had that you were so defining don't stick around. You fail and you lose, but you can rise back up. And there are elements of that in Trek, like Picard season 3 is great, but like Picard shows like the biggest difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. Trek was, here's this group of people, and you're watching this group of people work together all the time. But with like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, the main cast is only together for a minute, like literally a minute. There's like one frame where they're all together. So, when you cut to the Force Awakens, and it's like, well, where's Luke? Last Jedi, he's flawed and he's failed, and like, and Han dies, and like it just feels more in some ways honest to me, as a storytelling idea, that like, hey, sometimes things don't work out. Like the relationships that are so important to you as a kid don't necessarily translate to what happens as an adult. People make mistakes. That's really interesting to me. So again, it's the idea of more, that you can keep on exploring, and that things won't necessarily line up the way that you want them to, which is just really interesting.
Yeah, and more reflective of life as well, because
exactly.
Cinema Craptaculous is your podcast destination for all things movies, good and bad, streaming series, good and bad, and pop culture, good, bad, and the ugly. You get a totally different show every week, such as People Also Watched with Adam, Dave, and Tara. They're 3 industry insiders who always find the hilarity in the big-budget feature and the lesser-known feature you may have missed. There is, of course, the Expanded Universe. This is your place to geek out. John, Doc, and S'more are your geek experts to talk about what's going on in the world of streaming series, movies, superheroes, pretty much any showbiz geek topic, they're going to talk about it. And, of course, there's the show that started it all, Cinema Craptaculous, with Stephanie, John, and Dave. You don't even need to have seen the movies these guys talk about to have a good time. So what are you waiting for? Go and subscribe to Cinema Craptaculous wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Hi, just wanted to pop in to say we're about to talk about Adam's story, The Veteran, and there will be spoilers. So if you haven't read the story yet, get a copy, read it, and then jump back on in. Or, here are some spoilers. So let's talk about your story, The Veteran.
Yeah.
First of all,
sorry.
Bizarre.
This is so weird, but this is the best thing ever. Go on. Let's talk about my Star Wars story. What is going on?
Let's talk about your Star Wars story, Adam. Your official canon short story, The Veteran.
So cool.
I want to be the first one to interview you on your first novel. So I'm just putting that in your ear right now.
I trust me. I pray to God I get to do that one day.
What was the process of getting the assignment like, and how did you come upon doing it about Dexter Jettster?
Well, I'll try to answer the second question first. How I came upon it, Dexter Jettster, was my friend Patrick Willems, who will laugh a lot at the story and will never let me live this down. He and I have been friends for a very long time now, about 5 or 6 years. And we like to give each other hell on Twitter, now X. and it's like, part of like an ongoing joke with us. And he had tweeted something about like Dexter Jettster, a Star Wars story when, and I was going to write something like, it's like, but Patrick, you hate Star Wars, something silly like that. And it was one of those moments of I was like, wait a minute. What is Dexter Jettster up to after the prequels? And that was like when the idea started forming for the story. How I got this incredible opportunity was the short version of the story is apparently Del Rey goes into a meeting with Lucasfilm with their list of authors, and Lucasfilm has their list of authors, and apparently I was on both lists, which is something that I just blew my mind when I found out.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And it was Lucasfilm had heard my audio drama, The Green Lama, which I'm incredibly proud of. It was definitely one of those, and this is a good lesson for like anyone who wants to do this. Like, obviously I'm very public about my Star Wars fandom, but I have a job in the industry, working with certain kinds of talent, but I was also writing on the side and writing and producing things. And I I knew that I really wanted to write a Star Wars. I knew I wanted to do these things. And I was working with this licensed property, the Green Lama, who's this Buddhist superhero from the 1940s and running for a very long time now. And I wanted to do an audio drama. And I looked at my partner and I said to her, listen, I want to do this. I want to do an audio drama. I'm very proud of this idea. I know I can do something with it, but like I can't wait for someone to open the door. I'm going to show them that I can do it. And it was a licensed property. So, it helped a little bit, but like I spent a lot of my own money, less than I would have had made a movie, but to sort of produce this 8-episode season. And Lucasfilm heard it, and they were impressed enough by it. I have to thank Lissa Hurwitz and Mike Siglain. Siglain is just, I'm sure you've heard about him on other podcasts. Mike Siglain is just the best. They're both amazing. And Siglain heard it, was impressed enough. Elizabeth Schaefer, who's an acquaintance of mine, had been at Del Rey, so she had been very supportive of my writing career for a very long time. And both of them kind of came together and like, oh, let's give him this chance. And that's how I got this opportunity. And to my dying day, I will fight for Elizabeth, Lissa, and Siglain, because they're like, it sounds silly to say, like, they're just wonderful humans. Like, they're just wonderful people, kind and caring and supportive, and just giving me this sort of untested author. Not that I haven't written before, and I'm writing a lot over the last few years, but like on this stage, on this on this massive platform, to give me this chance has been just amazing. It's just I'm so grateful to them.
That's really impressive. I mean, it's a first of all, it's a tribute to the industrialism of going out and making it happen. So when you got this assignment and you're writing for Dexter Jester, how do you approach writing the character who's familiar to so many people?
Yeah. So, I mean, I knew what my story was for a while. Like I said, like I had this pitch in the back of my head, and they asked like, what character you want to choose, what's your story, and you can sort of like say like character and story later. I kind of knew that what I wanted to do, so I basically pitched a version of this story where like everyone's celebrating, but Dex is like, well, I know better. So how I approached it was, I obviously saw Attack of the Clones more times than I can count. At the time when I wrote the story, the High Republic hadn't announced that he was going to be in it. But I did reach out to my friend Alex Damon at Star Wars Explains, and I was like, hey, Alex, if I were to read Dexter Jester's stories, what's canon? And he sent me to, and which I was going to read anyway, because I read Star Wars books like for fun. Like, this is like, it's I've joked like, oh, this is research. And now I'm like, it's research. But I read Kirsten White's Padawan and Mike Chan's Brotherhood. And so so Padawan especially gave me the sort of emotional spine of the story, because I knew what I wanted to do. I sort of wasn't sure whether I was still in the sort of like a research phase where like, is the diner open? Then you look at Chuck Wendig's Aftermath's book and like, oh no, it's closed. Okay, that actually, I'm gonna actually put a pin in this. We'll go back to this in a second, like about like working within canon. But like you start looking at like what everything's around there, but like what the emotions are. That everyone's celebrating. That he is the one person who's like, no, everything's not okay because of this. So what I did was I read Padawan, which gave me the emotional spine when like he meets Obi-Wan on Lenara, and you're like, okay, oh, he's a child, and like, oh, that's where the emotion comes from. And then you start thinking, well, you learn everything you can about his character that's canon as much as possible. You learned stuff from Brotherhood, again, Padawan. There's a few stories. I didn't know what was going on in the High Republic. I just knew that he was alive during the High Republic. that's all I knew. That gave me some more like, okay, well, he's been alive for hundreds of years. What does that emotion mean? What he's seen the Starlight Beacon, he's seen the Republic at its best, and now he's at the Empire. So you understand a little bit more of the emotion. Going in, I read the Smuggler's Guide, where it talks about being on Office Klee. So I learned everything I can about him, and also what's canon, specifically in Return of the Jedi. And you try to learn as much as you can, and then you narrow it down. You start like cutting everything out. Like, what does this character know at this point in time? So like he knows the first Death Star is destroyed, but he doesn't know why would he know who blew it up? He's literally stuck in Coruscant. Like, how would that information get to him? And there's also like, well, and this is sort of, again, goes to the spine of the story. He's like, well, here's what he knows. He saw the Camino Saber Dart. He gave it to Obi-Wan. Clone Wars start. And he's smart. He can see a direct line. Now the downfall of the Empire, the downfall of the Republic, rise of the Empire. He sees the Purge. But why would he know what happened to Obi-Wan? How would he know? There's no way he could have known. So that helps give you sort of the emotion of like, do you see this direct line? And then his friend, this kid he knew on Lanara, who became this great warrior, he's gone because of him. So you start like, you learn as much as you can, and then you start like figuring out like what this character knows and how that would affect him. And sort of doubling back to like the Chuck Wendig of it all. You start like one of the reasons I chose Dexter was initially like, well, partially because I could figure out all the emotions. I feel like there was some really interesting narrative choices that you could make. But I was like, oh, well, I don't have to worry too much about canon. I don't have to bump up against too much. I have a little more free reign. Like I could have chosen, other characters. Like I never pitched this, but like in the back of my head, I'm like, well, what about Sith Acolyte on Exegol? And I'm like, no, this is way too much. I never even pitched it. This is the first time I've been mentioning it out loud. But like, I just realized like there's too many things. But like, I'm like, oh, there's a lot more room to play. But what happened was I started needing to take into account canon. And at every turn, it made the story better. And that is because like, you're like, oh, well, initially it's like, well, he's going to be in the diner. That's kind of like what the initial pitch was. Like, they're seeing all these things, and like it wasn't even in the initial pitch, but sort of my initial thinking was like, well, he's going to try to like give a diner patron to have a conversation with the diner patron. And it was like, it was fine. It was fine. But then you're like, well, the diner's closed. How does that affect him? Okay, so, but I want to get him to the diner in some way that felt natural. But like, you're like, okay, this, and then you hear about like the riots on Mining Plaza. You're like, okay, how does that affect him? Like the moment, like, I think there's some, one can argue that like sometimes like getting rid of canon, like I think with the Kelvin universe and Star Trek, like, well, let's just reboot because now we can tell whatever we want. There are really good opportunities in that. But I found specifically in my experience with this, like, the more you have to think inside this box, the more creative you have to be. And it opens up so many storytelling opportunities and so many really interesting emotions, because it's sort of like, I would say almost like my initial version of this based on just like Dexter Jester during Coruscant, he knows better. It would have been, I think, a bit more of him giving hope to the diner patron. Yeah. But because it's like, you're like, oh, this. Oh, that's where he is emotionally. He needs to find the hope. It just offered so many new storytelling opportunities that, like, again, you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're coming in just blank slate. So yeah, obviously, I think the biggest thing that Star Wars is this hopeful story. And I think, again, what I love about even like the sequels and even the prequel trilogy, and at every point, like, things get really dark, get real dark. But there's always that light shining. And sometimes like you kind of have to remember like to find that light. I think that, again, like Andor, like, God, Andor, let's just talk about Andor for like 20 minutes. Like, I think that's what's interesting. It's like how much his character goes through to find that hope. Yeah. And I mean, you can't have Star Wars without hope, but you can definitely have characters without it who need to find it.
That's a good point. I like that. What element did you get to add to Star Wars canon that you're particularly proud of?
Two things. There's level 2401. That is my lucky number. I hide that in everything. And I want to be very like, this is a larger conversation that I have with myself. I was very mindful of avoiding any kind of real sort of fan service, if that makes sense. And by fan service, I mean like my own personal fan service. Like there's a few things I loved that I added to the canon, but like I didn't want to like have, for example, like my role-playing group. Like I didn't name any of the characters after my role-playing group. My role-playing character is already canon because of Heather Antos and Justina Ireland. There's a character, Lynella K by U. K by U is my family name in my Star Wars RPG. So I'm already there. I'm already in. I don't need any more. I don't need any
And
more.
what story is that in? What?
It's a Jedi. It's a High Republic Adventures from IDW. It's like a really quick story. I cannot tell you what it's like. I'm sure Camos knows what it's like now, but for me, I was like, I had no idea. And I'm like, I'm gonna catch up on these Star Wars books I haven't read in a while on the plane. And then like we're about to take off, and it's like Lynella came in. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? like am I having a stroke? What's happening? This is not true. And then like sure enough, it was because like she had I look back, Heather had asked me like, what is your character name? Oh, it's K by U. So like I didn't want to put in anything that felt false to Dexter's story. I didn't want to insert anything like it wouldn't have made sense for him to like have Alonso Bogano show up. Like that's something the fans would have liked, but like I don't necessarily think it's something that would have felt true for his story. Like even like I had for a good hour, literally an hour, because I wrote it down in my draft and then I deleted it after a run. I mentioned Whaladons from Glove of Darth Vader. So I was like, put Whaladons in there, and I was like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel true for him at this place. So my only sort of allowance of quote unquote fan service was me putting in my lucky number, which is like in every story I put in. Like, so like level 2401 is like, that's my floor. Like, it's mine. No one else's. And there's another thing that I love is Camos. I've already mentioned him. He's a lovely guy on Twitter. He's a fan. And I was looking for a character name for the kid that he meets outside. I'm like, well, and it instantly Camos. I'm like, that's just a Star Wars name. It's such a good Star Wars name. I didn't have to like do anything to it. I just Camos. And I had an interaction with him. I'm like, hey, Camos, what's your favorite Star Wars species? Give me a whole list. And I'm like, there's no way I can make you a Chiss. There's no way I can make you a Vaughn. I don't want you to be a human. Give me another list. And then he eventually came up with Talon, and I was like, okay, that's what it is. Yeah. And so there was that. There's also the Nazar. That's a species that's originally from the EU. I think it originally originated from Tales of the Jedi that I brought into canon. Murats are something also that I brought into canon. And my friend, I think that was like, they're from the EU, but I brought them into. And then there's Vekan Menez, who is named after my friend Kevin Howard and his wife Emily Menez. But I'm just happy to be here, dude. I'm just so happy to be here. It's like if someone says like it's not canon, I'm like, yeah, but I still wrote a Star Wars. Like, it's have that on my shelf.
Yeah, I mean it's canon enough.
Yeah, canon enough. Trust me, I definitely wrote it in a way to fit into canon, like easier.
One thing I want to ask you, I always want to ask authors this, and I sometimes forget, but what do you think makes a good Star Wars name? And what's the best way to come up with one?
Well, Camos, it was very much just like that. Just sounds like a good name. And Vekan, there's a few reasons why we settled on Vekan. You look at like Orn Frita, for example. I always think of as a good example of that because that's corn fritters, or corn Frito-Lays or something like that. That like Lucas is like, oh yeah. I feel like there's always a little bit of it sounds like a real name, but just slightly off. They sound like they could be real, but there's also sort of like an intangible difference to them. It's just like, yes, that like it's like Talon Card, right? Like it's even Mara Jade, it's like that feels like a Star Wars name. Thrawn feels like a Star Wars name, but like Ken from Glove of Darth Vader doesn't really feel like a Star Wars name. It feels like, God, the reason why he thought his name was Ken, so Ken in the books thought he was named after Kenobi. This is true. So Ken thought he was the grandson of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's why he was named, and that's why he thought he was named Ken. That wasn't the case, but like again, I don't feel like Ken is a Star Wars name. And again, I love those books, so what do I know? But yeah, I think it's a combination of like it feels familiar, but there's something different about it. Something that like just like I love the name Rey and Finn and Poe. Those all feel like really good Star Wars. Like Kira's a really great Star Wars name. Even like Din Djarin, like it's like like you feel like you would know someone named Din Djarin, but it's not a real name. So it's Ahsoka is also a good Star Wars name. I don't know. It's like they sound real, but there's something off about it. There's no right answer to this.
I feel as though what Star Wars accomplishes really well to me is not quite of our universe, and it's not represented in the same way we would represent it. And that's always been an attraction for me to Star Wars, is that it truly feels a little otherworldly. And I think the names fall in that category as well.
Yeah, I remember I forget who did it. It was a YouTube video like trying to figure out like the storage mediums of Star Wars, and like it was through Rogue One, like this, and I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of like the appeal. Like I like that, like for example, like even like the way that astromechs interact with like other machines. It's like it feels just. You look at it, like I understand what's going on. I visually understand that this thing is interacting with this thing. How that actually works is a completely different story. But it's like, it always feels like it's different enough. It's not like there's not necessarily a logical straight line from how that thing was created, but like it has to feel right. And that, like, if it logically or like in reality couldn't work, that's fine. It's Star Wars. There's no air and space, but they're still going to bank. They're still going to bank as they turn. It's like, again, like a lightsaber, basically physically impossible for a lightsaber to work. But like you look at it and you're like, yeah, that feels right. That feels right.
It's so funny. The whole universe of just like, nope, that just feels right. That's good.
Yep. Like there's like that, like even that like one shot in Force Awakens where like the bird is like pecking at like there's a really great shot of like when her speeder flies by and like and you're like that bird is trying to eat metal. Yeah, it feels right. That feels right. Feels right. Yeah.
I always think of Harry Potter. In the Harry Potter world, they use magic like it's an everyday thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like Star Wars too, in that it uses kind of sci-fi fantasy as an everyday thing. It's like, there's moisture farmers. That's what you do on a desert planet. You farm moisture.
Yeah, there's biomes, like the single planet biomes, which is like is literally impossible. But you're like, yeah, it feels right. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. Well, I have just two kind of quick questions for you. We're coming up on 11:30. I want to make sure I get you out. The High Republic, how would you pitch that to someone who's never read it before?
It's the Jedi at their height. It is basically when Obi-Wan Kenobi says, for 1,000 generations, the galaxy was peace and the Jedi. Like, this is, in every way, it is what you, in some ways, expected what the Jedi should have been in the prequels. And again, as someone who was a George Lucas apologist growing up, and loves the prequels, I think there was sort of this like rightly sense of disappointment how the Jedi are portrayed. Like they're kind of like stuffy and things. And I think with the High Republic, it does show what the Jedi were when they were at their best. And you get to see the downfall of like 1,000 cuts. You get to see what the Republic was like at its height. Again, death by 1,000 cuts, like all great intentions. It's also just expansive. It's very expansive. I think the biggest, again, going back to something I said before, like there's more. You have this sense of like, and I think in the first time, and it's really refreshing to get outside this sort of like 60-year period. As much as I love the 6-year period of seeing like, oh, wait, like they don't know where everything is. They like things don't always work exactly the way they should, but they're all trying. Like, trying to do their best. Yeah, that's not the most succinct way of saying it, but that's how it's sort of pitched the High Republic. Yeah.
No, it sounds fascinating. I've talked to a lot of people who are massive fans of High Republic.
Yeah.
I haven't started it yet. And
start with
the more I talk to people.
Yeah. Definitely start with Light of the Jedi. Like that, like I will say that opening like 3 chapters is just incredible. And like I was like at the end of like the 3rd chapter, like, and you'll know when you get to that. I think like it's just really interesting. Again, it's familiar enough that you're like able to like, yeah, I know where I'm at here. But there's so many new things like, oh, like the way the Jedi are portrayed, more exploratory, both in terms of the galaxy and how they define what a Jedi is. There's way seekers who are Jedi but not. They are allowed. There's this idea that like, yeah, you can have sex, like, but you can't get married. There's a lot more leeway in sort of what defines the Jedi. So it gives extra, like, all that new content gives extra context to the prequel Jedi, where they're like very rigid about like, what is a Jedi? This is a Jedi. You don't have enough midichlorians, etc. Where like there's a lot. It just feels in every sense expansive.
Wow. Okay, so of all the things that are announced right now, what are you looking forward to the most?
It's kind of a triple way tie. Most immediately, the Acolyte. I'm really looking forward to. Again, it's a High Republic. I like that we're sort of getting outside this 60-year period, just from a narrative standpoint. In sort of that same sense, like, I'm really excited for Rey and her post episode 9 story, because again, it's like, what happens after episode 9? Same thing that for all of us growing up, like, what happens after episode 6? Like, the heroes won. What do they do? What does it mean to win? Just there's the sort of blue sky thinking, like, anything can happen. Anything can happen. That's really interesting. And then there's Mangold's Old Republic's like Rise of the Jedi, because again, it's like, we don't know. And I hope it's like, I don't want all the answers. Don't tell me all the answers about like how the Jedi, like, but like the idea of this sort of biblical epic of the Jedi is really interesting to me. So like, again, I think like those 3 eras are just, it shows how massive this galaxy actually is. Because as much as we love the Jedi versus Sith, the Rebellion and the Empire, we have to remember, like, in terms of like scale, like that's like, yes, this is the era of like a 10,000 years of history. And it just like, it means that, like, again, the doors are opening. That's really exciting. Like, there are eras that, like, I'm excited. Those are the 3, just those 3 for sure.
What era would you like to write in next? Like, from
I can tell you,
10,000 years.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, I'm really there's 2 eras that I'm obviously. There's the High Republic. I love that era. I think there's so many storytelling opportunities that are both within and sort of adjacent to the main narrative that they're telling, because they do such a great job of opening doors. That I'm like, oh, there's a lot of potential here. Like, you could tell a story over there, you tell a story over there. Like, well, you don't need to stick here. You can put that over there. There's also so that I love the High Republic, like, because again, it's expansive. And I hope to explore the episode that affords that 15-year period between episode 9 and the Rey, the New Jedi Order film. Because again, I think there is this really interesting opportunity to explore a galaxy in flux. Like, so what are the lessons? And this is all real world stuff that you can bring in. It's like, so, the interesting thing about the New Republic period that we're in right now with like Mando and Ahsoka is that, we get to see this benevolent Republic rise and fall. That's really interesting. So now you have these heroes trying to now learn from the mistakes of their heroes. What choices are they going to make? I think there's something about like, well, what do the Jedi mean? Like, there's something that, like, I forget how it was phrased, but like, does the galaxy want the Jedi? That's an interesting question. It's just like, because like you look from that sort of ground level, in universe ground level, like the Jedi have been for the last like 60 something years, they've been the sort of a big problem for us. Like, not necessarily a problem, but like a lot of like these wars were fought because of these 2 opposing diametric things. Like, do we necessarily want this? How do they grow? How does like Rey, from as someone, all she has is these books and maybe a Force ghost or 2. So you have this idea of this young woman starting this rebirthing the Jedi Order in a way that, like, she didn't really have Yoda or Obi-Wan. She, like Luke, she knew for a little while, and they obviously have a relationship, but like in many ways, she's where I think. So this is going to get a little in the weeds. So with Luke, he was trained by Obi-Wan and Yoda at sort of this tail end of the Jedi. And they were very much influenced by the prequels and this sort of like very narrow view of what the Jedi could be. And now Rey has sort of seen that maybe it's not this narrow idea. right now it's maybe because she saw kind of what happened with Luke and with Ben and everything like that. So now, but she can go back to the original text, to the original, like the thing that founded this religion, this way of understanding the Force. She can look at it from the, like, it's kind of like a good comparison. It's like finding the Dead Sea Scrolls, is that like she's like, she just went back and she's like, oh, they lost their way at some point. And that's something that's happened in the real world. You can sort of see like how like religions kind of bifurcate and change. And she can be like, huh, well, what if I just start basing off of this? That's really interesting. Again, I think the idea of like, what do you do when the heroes win? That was the stuff that I love about the Legends era, the EU, where like what new threats are coming in. Just, you know, there's so many things that you can do. So yeah, those 2 hours are, if I'm lucky enough to write another Star Wars, I really want to explore those two. Just because, again, there's so many opportunities. And I think something else that I love, and I'm sorry, I'm going down the deep end, but clearly I'm excited. The thing that I really hope to do, if I am so lucky, is sort of more of that mixing and matching of eras. I think some of the stuff that I love, and like how Republic does it, I did it a bit with Dexter Jester, is this idea of something from era A and era B. And, you know, like, what is it like? What is Naboo like during the sequel trilogy? What is Coruscant like, you know, in the Old Republic? Like, I love seeing that sort of like, that's my personal fan service. That's the stuff that gets me going. It's like, oh wow, like let's visit this thing hundreds of thousands of years later, or let's like let's not go to Tatooine because we know what that's like. We've never been to Tatooine since. But like, you know, I really want to see some of the stuff that like places that we've been in other films and visit them later or earlier. I think there's a lot of storytelling opportunities there. So
yeah, I think one of the things in the current Star Wars entertainment, at least for the TV shows or the New Republic, I feel like the recurring theme is bureaucracy is the death of peace. There's
definitely that.
It's just, what are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
Hope. Obviously, I think you cannot have it without hope. I think this sense of adventure, this sense of like you can go in any direction, and oh man, I can give you like 10 if actually. And then I think we'll keep it to 3. I guess a sense of sort of doubling off that like anything can happen, that the story will change as you go, and it won't necessarily be a clean cut narrative. That it will complicate itself, not necessarily like in a narrative sense, but more in a relationship sense. Like the thing that I loved about the sequel trilogy is the idea that like there's the throne room scene where like they're back to back and fighting, and like that, like to this day is one of my favorite moments in Star Wars of all time. To back to something we talked about at the beginning, it's like I had no idea what the hell was going on. I was like, what is happening? What is happening? Like the good guy and the bad guy are fighting back to back. That's not supposed to happen. That's the sense of like excitement and like anything can happen. The relationships are much more complex than you assume. So yeah, those are 3 things.
What is your favorite Star Wars memory?
Now we're down to 1. It's gonna take me a minute. Seeing Phantom Menace with my dad. That is, I think, my dad let me skip school. We went to the 9:00 showing at the UA Theater in Sheepshead Bay. I just remember, less even about the movie itself, but just being able to do that was very, that I think will always be like a very high point. You know, obviously I think second is always going to be like, do you want to write a Star Wars? Like getting it on my phone and just being like, what? I was so happy I was kneeling down at the time because I looked it on my phone. I was cleaning up like under my sink. Like this is how like unglamorous my life is like I'm cleaning under my sink, and like I get like an email on my phone, and I look at it and I'm like my watch, and I fall down, but I was already on the ground kneeling because I would have fallen, broken something. But yeah, I hope, especially for a lot of like people who are listening right now who really like want to write a Star Wars, I hope one of you or more of you get to like experience that. Do you want to write a Star Wars? It is the best feeling in the world. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, like this whole experience has lived up to every single bit of my dreams and has exceeded them at every turn. The response to the story has been unbelievable, and just everyone's been so kind, and I mean that from the other my fellow Star Wars authors have been so supportive and just like cheerleading me on. Kristen Baver, one of my dearest friends, I got to share this experience with her. Kristen and I text every day, usually about cats. But it's, it's I could share this with her. I've already mentioned Seguin and Lissa and Elizabeth and Tom. But then from my fellow fans being like on this other end of it has been just it's just a dream come true. I hope and pray that everyone gets to experience something like this, because I cannot be the only one who gets to be this lucky. It's been great. It's been great.
Can't imagine. It sounds like a fantastic experience. My last question to every guest is, you go to Skywalker Ranch, and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
Well, I'll tell you what I said to George Lucas when I met him. So I was in, this is one of my favorite stories, my favorite Star Wars stories. It's ridiculous. So I was at NYU, where I went to film school. And one of my jobs there was, I worked in the film and TV library, which basically meant I sat in a room with a lot of DVDs and I helped them out, and I had to close some doors. It was the best job. But my boss, Alice Benavides, and her husband, Rob Benavides, who are awesome, they were both Star Wars fans. So we bonded really quickly. And there was a rumor one day that George Lucas was coming in. It was like for the THX 1138 re-release. He was in town. And I was like, okay, oh my God. And I went to someone, and one of my coworkers, I forget, and I was like, there's a rumor that Lucas is going to be in here today. And they have his look away. I'm like, I don't know anything, but if I were you, I would go to this room at this time. I don't know why one would do that, but that's where I would go. And it was his first day. It was the first day of class, senior year, second semester, senior year, when I don't need to give a shit. But I'm a nerd, and I call my mom up. I'm like, Mom, I have a problem. She's like, what's wrong? Like, there's a class. It's my first class, but it's the same time that George Lucas is going to be here. My mom, Adam, what the fuck? Go meet George Lucas. I go there. I sit next to what turns out to be Walter Murch for a while. We're sitting there, and then it's like then there's this whole thing where we're sitting front row. Talking about this really interesting conversation about THX 1138, how he tried to get out the studio system, and how he became the studio system, which is fascinating. But when I went up to him, I thanked him at the end of it. I went up to him and I said, Mr. Lucas, you're the reason I'm here, and the reason why I'm doing all this. I went to film school because I wanted to work on Star Wars. I'm here because of you. And it was right before Revenge of the Sith came out, and I'm like, my dad raised me on movie serials, and Commander Cody is based on Commando Cody, and I'm really excited to see it. But yeah, I got to tell him that I got to tell George Lucas he is the reason that I do everything I do. Everything. It's just because of that. Those movies is that's what I would tell George Lucas if I met him.
You're living the dream, man.
It's been a lot of hard work, and it's been a lot of patience, and it's been difficult. But it's this is just
40 years after Return of the Jedi, you're there.
I'm there. I'm hoping it's the start of a journey. If it's not, it's fine. I did it. I did the thing. I can look at myself. I'm like, yeah, I did it. And that's what matters. But again, I think just thank you to everybody, and thank you for this. This has been a blast. I'm just so happy to talk about this and do this for not necessarily a living, but just to be a part of this community of Star Wars fans and Star Wars authors is just a blessing.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm so honored to be your first podcast as the subject matter. Thank you. I loved your point of view. I loved hearing your kind of explanation of the cyclical nature of the Star Wars universe, if not our universe. And may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Thank you so much.
So that's what Star Wars means to Adam Lance Garcia. And again, it's just so much fun talking to someone who is starting their Star Wars career and is enjoying it so much. You can follow Adam on X, aka Twitter, and Instagram at Adam Lance Garcia. And you can hear his Green Lama audio drama on Apple Podcasts. You can find the links to these in the podcast show notes, as well as links to his website and his Amazon authors page. Would you skip work for a chance to meet George Lucas? Did you read The Glove of Darth Vader? And what's your favorite Star Wars name? Get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you, always. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners, and that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.